Welcome to What's Important to You, the podcast where we explore purpose, passion, and the moments that truly matter. I'm James Dean, and each week I sit down with inspiring guests to uncover what drives them, inspires them, and what's important to them. Today on What's Important to You, we explore the connection between business, purpose, spirituality, and personal growth. My guest shares why external success alone is rarely enough, how mindset and values shape the way we lead, and why adding values to others is one of the most powerful paths to fulfillment. We talk about identity, emotional resilience, coaching, mindfulness, and the importance of staying connected to what truly matters in both business and life. Today, we find out what's important to spiritual business coach, entrepreneur, and founder of Spirituality and Business Institute, Andrew Grinbaum. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, how are you?
Really, great. Really looking forward to chatting to you. So we're going to dive straight in, Andrew, with the first question, which is, what's important to you?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Well, as you know, I'm a business coach, and I call myself a spiritual business coach. And what does that mean? So what's important for me, I started this nonprofit called Spirituality and Business Institute. And the idea is that, I see that, my actions as an entrepreneur make a difference in the world. And, I wanted to take that to other people, basically. And so what's important for me is to motivate and get entrepreneurs excited about changing the world. We are the ones who can change it. We can move, we can pivot fast, and so forth. And so I've been building this nonprofit supporting entrepreneurs and some executives, right, in bigger companies, but primarily small business owners who don't just want to make money. And for years and years, I've helped clients make a lot of money. There's formulas for that. There's standard operating procedures, right, to make money. Okay, there's systems. But how do you also make money and change the world? And the reason it's important to me is that when people are involved in adding value to the world, then they feel better about themselves as well. And that lifts everybody. So when you're making a difference, you feel great. Kind of like you doing this podcast. You can influence one person for a podcast. You may have saved that one person. So that's what's really important to me, is that to inspire, because what happens is that a lot of people start businesses, let's say they become successful. People come to me, they're already successful, but they're working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I don't know how much they work in Europe over there, but in US, a lot of people work a lot.
Yeah.
And they have the Porsche, they have the 2 homes, they have everything, but they feel completely empty. So they come to me and I'm like, well, it's not really more money you want to make because you already have money.
Yeah.
And it's about finding purpose and adding value back to your community or to your employees or something that will help change the world. And I try to work that, with change. If people want to be change agents and they maybe had a dream, right, to do something big, and now they're just making money, which isn't bad, but just making money, you see it all the time. I lived in New York for 25 years. I was around a lot of like super, super affluent people. And they weren't happy.
Yeah.
But they have like a beautiful, they have everything in the physical world.
Yes.
So that's what spirituality to me is, not that you believe in any one God, or even if you believe in God. I have clients who are agnostic and atheist, but they're making a difference in the world. And I think that spirituality is seeing how everything is connected, that your consciousness, where you are in your mindset, let's not even call it consciousness is like can be a little too spiritual. Let's call it mindset.
Yeah.
Where your mind is, makes a huge difference to the people around you. So that's what spirituality is, to know that we're all connected, that your attitude today, it's like the butterfly effect. Your attitude today can affect people all around you without you even realizing it, right? You step into an elevator, and your energy affects people.
Yes.
And so, but it's very hard for the reason I work with small, it's important to me to work with small business owners. These are already people who've struggled, who've gotten from 0 to 1 in their business, and now they're successful on paper. And so they can make big changes. If somebody can take a business from 0 to 1 million or 0 to 4 million, wow, those are very special people. Not everybody can do that. so they can make a big difference in the world. And so
Yeah.
that's what's important to me. And that's why I have this nonprofit. I kind of came out of the closet, so to speak, about being spiritual and meditating and
Yeah, yeah.
Allah, which we can talk about like mysticism and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm out about it. I post about it. I go on blog, I write about it. I go on podcasts. There's people are definitely today, so very spiritually hungry.
Yes.
They're starving for spiritual knowledge and consciousness. They're
Yeah.
really hungry for it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting you say that actually, because I'm doing this, as you say, this podcast for quite a while now, a couple of years now, and 100 episodes in. And what's really interesting is in the most recent sort of conversations I've had, even when it's about business, the concept of spirituality, religion, or that sort of level of purpose, or but a sort of more than just purpose, as you say, a different level. Everyone can say purpose can be very sort of analytical as well, if we think of it in
Oh,
some ways. It can be, you can
for
write it
sure.
down, but that sort of real sort of the giving contribution, I think. So you said about community there. It's definitely becoming much more of a conversation that, and people like yourself that I've spoken to. So because I think as well, and this could be wrong, but I think almost business coaches are 10 a penny now. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, what elevates a good business coach? What elevates is like, because it's, you can again use, you can give people processes, you can give them procedures, you can give them all the words that are there, the KPIs, and for a successful business. But how do you connect with that success to another, whatever level it is, beyond just writing down purpose and beyond it? How does it actually, because I think really, if someone finds that, the real sort of meaning behind what they're doing and sense of giving back, then it's the sort of, I don't know what the word motivation, because that can come and go, but the reason behind doing something is much greater
Yeah,
than
this
say
could be, it's
it,
motivation. Yeah. There's a reason to get up
100%.
in the morning. There's a reason.
Exactly. And in theory, because if the business is successful in the sense of it's making money or whatever, then it's the reason you say that getting up in the morning, if it's done right and it's still done correctly, like the making of the money, in some ways a byproduct of what you're doing, if that makes sense, because it's just everything's in on it. When you said, because it's interesting, you said, oh, you almost like had to sort of, you reveal to the world that you have this side of you, this more spiritual side of you. So was that something that you always had and you just kind of kept it more personal, or is it something you grew into in life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, so just I want to answer that question, but first, yeah,
Yeah.
I start with, so one of the best ways to start is, I start with business coaching clients. What I do is I step back and I ask them, we work on their vision, their mission, their values. And there's a lot of great
Mm,
tools out there to help you identify your values. And values are a great place to begin. It's very practical for a coach because if you can identify a client's values, you will see, and this is very, even clients who I've done this values work with, we go back every year. All right, we do
mm,
planning at the end of December, beginning of January ish, right? Strategic planning for the year. And the first thing I touch on, which is not something you typically do in strategic planning, is what are your values? I put one of my
mm,
clients up. I remember she was like, Andy, don't put me on the spot. Like, I don't know what they are. I'm like, but we worked on, so she wasn't living from her values. And we realized that all the problems she's had during the year were all to do with the fact that she wasn't living on her values. Isn't that
mm,
interesting? And I see that all the time. So that's a very practical way
mm.
um, of getting in touch with something more inner. Okay,
Yes.
inside. What does really matter to you? And I have my values on my wall right there, like I see them in front of me all the time to remember. If I don't act from those values, then I'm gonna be sad, like literally sad.
Mm,
I won't have any motivation. So that's a very practical way to begin. And there's all the things for mission and for why and discovering, like going back to your childhood. I do some of that work to feel what made you really happy when you were little, all that kind of stuff. But to answer your question, it's not, I was really, I went to religious school when I was young and I asked a lot of questions and the teachers didn't have answers. So I
mm,
kind of dismissed it. By the time I was 13, 14, I was like, this is nonsense. I went to a Jewish school, like a yeshiva, but maybe you went to Christian or Catholics. It's all the same stuff. They can't
Yeah.
answer the questions. They can't answer. So I saw these people don't know anything. But I was very curious. Interestingly, when I was in college, several times people gave me books on Kabbalah, which is a Jewish mysticism. It comes from, but it's Christians and Muslims and Jews have studied Kabbalah. It's a mystical tradition, very old, goes back to actually Abraham the patriarch, who wrote the first book on Kabbalah. It's interesting, people don't know that there was a book that predates the Bible by like 400 years called the Sefer Yetzirah, which is attributed to Abraham the patriarch. All right, in any event, so it's very, but book people have given me books like really weird, like from nowhere. Or I was at I was working at a magazine. I was about 20 years old. I had this really cool job, and I went into this spiritual kind of esoteric bookstore to try to get them as an advertiser. And I'm walking with the owner as I'm walking through one of the, like a book falls on me, and it's a book by this guy, uh, Philip Berg. He's like, "Oh, you should get this book." I'm like, "Oh, it's like a rabbi." I'm like, "Nah, I'm not getting anything with rabbi." I had a bad experience. Like, I'm not getting anything with rabbis. This is not for me. I'm not a spiritual guy. I'm not a I don't like this stuff. So things like that always happened until when I moved to New York. I was 21, 22. Somebody just gave me a flyer for a class, and it was on Kabbalah, an introduction to Kabbalah. And I was like, okay, well, there's too many messages. I don't believe in this stuff, but this happened too many times. Books falling on me. I went to Europe. I was at Gibraltar, of all places. I'm in a bookstore, and there's this religious looking guy there. He gives me a book. You should read this. It's again by Philip Berg. What is this? Does stuff like that happen? So it was a message, right, that I had to study this. So I was very lucky to find it very early. And when I went to the first class, and that's what separates, I think, true mystical studies from religious studies, is the first thing they said was, don't believe anything we say and ask any question. I was like, okay, great.
Mm,
That's a good place to begin. Don't believe anything. All right. Prove it to yourself, which I really like that. So that
mm,
began my journey. And I was very lucky because that's when I first moved to New York. I was in graduate school for business. And it really, as I learned more and more business and got involved with the corporate world, I also had this deep study that was very practical. It wasn't religious. It wasn't praying to a god, with a big beard, right? We all pray in the white robes. God always has the
yeah,
Greek robes on, right? The Greek toga robes, right? The toga robes, the big beard, you know, and it wasn't about that. It was very practical. And to me, I started using it almost like I look at these ancient Kabbalistic writings and modern ones too. I look at the ancient Kabbalists as almost like ancient Tony Robbinses. They were
mm,
there to help you transform and look around and make a difference in the world, right? And you look at all these people from the Bible, they made a huge difference. We remember them, right? Very few people we know from 3,000 years ago,
mm,
4,000 years ago. We know Abraham, Isaac, Moses, Jesus, all these guys and gals too, right? We know them.
yeah,
We know their names because they changed a lot of people for the better,
yeah, yeah,
right? If we take, there's a great book. If you just take Jesus's words, just the words, and if everybody just lived by his words, it'd be an amazing world. Now we don't,
mm,
and people fight over the words, which is that's
yeah,
religion. But it's amazing. All these people, whether it's Abraham or Moses or Miriam or Jesus, the Buddha, like if we just take their words
yeah,
and live by their words, it's really amazing. So I kind of came out of the closet and I started using this stuff. And I saw that it
mm,
really, really made a big difference in my life.
yeah. So how then, having it from a personal perspective, and I get
Mhm.
that from something that gives something yourself, how do you then sort of integrate it as use it as part or to differentiate it as part of it then as your sort of part of your coaching? Because is it because it's just the fact that it's part of you, it almost seems just normal that it's part of your coaching, or is it that you're trying to enable someone to maybe see something in a slightly different way?
Yeah. Well, what it's really good at. So, first of all, I saw that, and I see after having studied this for over 30 years, that a lot of modern coaching is based on these spiritual principles.
Mm,
I see the
yes.
line going back. All these people, and if you go back really, whatever you say, whenever you say like, did coaching start with NLP or with EST or whenever it started, the modern version of it, all that stuff is connected to this mysticism.
Mm,
And then you could, there was like in the US, I don't know, there were Christian scientists in the early 20th century, and they did a lot of this, this like transformational, it goes back. So it's very easy to use it. And because it's been time tested over
mm,
3,800 years, when I learn something new, I test it against what I know. And if it makes sense in that framework, in that context, let's say the mathematics works,
yeah.
right? Then I know it's something real. And if it's not,
Mm,
if it doesn't jive with it, then I know it's something that was recently made up. But the
mm,
best coaches, they can trace everything back to Kabbalah. It's that
mm,
powerful. And because also it has influenced, and we can see in history, all these great scientists. Isaac Newton, by the way, he wrote more. He has his own Zohar, which is the seminal work of Kabbalah, written 2,000 years ago. His Zohar, um, which is behind me. The blue books there. They're in Aramaic, ancient Aramaic, but they can translate it. He wrote 2/3 of what he wrote was on mysticism, right?
mm,
Not science. But then they were
yeah.
more connected. People understood that we may have today, science has gotten rid of the soul. There's no
Mm,
soul. It's just process and math and the scientific principles, which is very important. And that works in the context of Kabbalah. Science works. It's not separated. That's what I love about, by the way, Kabbalah, is that Kabbalah doesn't say no to science. It says yes to science. It's very
mm,
powerful. It's also from the light of the creator, right? All these great scientific discoveries. They're also gifts to us and all these great scientists. So in any event, I use it, but I can give a little deeper, I can reference something that you could probably find possibly in a Tony Robbins course,
yeah.
right? But I can reference the Zohar. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with one of my clients, and she asked me what I learned. She just asked me like what I learned this week. Try to study a couple times, at least a couple times a week, some deep Kabbalistic books or something.
Mm,
And I learned something, and I used it in a coaching. I changed it. It wasn't just a piece of learning. It was, now how can you use this to make your life, your day better? That's
mm,
all Kabbalah is that. So that's what
mm,
coaching is, right? How do we make things
yes.
better? There's 4,000 years of writings and knowledge on this, which is very
Yeah.
exciting. I'm surprised more coaches don't study Kabbalah because they should.
Mm, yeah.
Because you can back up your stuff with stuff that Abraham said. Pretty
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, it's interesting to say because it's this we and I think I'm sort of paraphrasing from Tony Robbins now because you had him saying it, but he's probably even paraphrasing himself. Is one of the things he says is we can get confused or we can get caught up in ourselves thinking in this moment in time we're the only other persons that's ever thought or said something. So kind of we think, and is sometimes it's like whether it be the ego or our own whatever self belief or self centeredness in the worst case scenario, or if it's a problem we have or challenge or anything, is like when you're completely isolating yourself or you're in that sort of I've got to do it myself, is I'm the only ever person to think or feel this or to
Mhm.
think or say this. And it's nonsense because if you there's whatever billions of people on the planet who are going to be thinking or feeling similar if not the same things, and then throughout the billions of people in history that have been having, so nothing is necessarily new in sense of the human condition. Arguably the thoughts, the feelings, the worries, that everything has happened before. And the same with the wisdom, so like, as you say, whether it be from
Exactly.
people you're saying, or the sort of like the Buddha, or so like if you think of the sort of Hindu or Sikhism, all these various different, or going back to sort of the Aboriginals in Australia and the sort of the way that the sort of the beliefs they have from the land and the sort of the creation, everything has its element of wherever it comes from, but the wisdom's there.
The wisdom's
And
always
so
been there.
always been there. So and this is where I think you say when you bring it, tying it to sort of modern day life and coaching, because the questions we're asking to evoke that feeling from someone. And it's kind of like, because it's more than you say than just process. Process is important. It's not to say that process isn't important. It's having the two there. It's having this sort of more sort of deliberate work, sort of going through how you have to navigate whatever it is, whether it be a business or your life. But this other layer that we can understand through asking ourselves or being asked really good questions.
Yeah.
But those really good questions have been asked for thousands of
Thousands
years.
of years.
That's what I think is really interesting. And it's leaning into that and not sort of what I came up with a great question. And no, I reused a question that's really, really powerful.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and to give you an example, so I'm reading this guy, this Kabbalist from early 18th century, in you know what a shtetl is? He was like in this little village in Eastern Europe. You know, you just imagine it's a poor little place with these, but there's this Kabbalist there teaching. His name is very hard to pronounce, Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl. He lived in Chernobyl, which is infamous today, but back then, before the nuclear problem.
Yeah.
So he lived in this little town, and he's talking to his students, and he happens to be talking to male students, and he's talking about, there's this thing in which is amazing how Kabbalah explains what really the Bible even means. It decodes the Bible. So in the Bible, whether it's the Old Testament, New Testament, right, it always talks about love God, right? There's this thing, you should love God, or people, love Jesus. And if you love Jesus, you're okay. Or if you love God, you're okay. But that seems really weird, because if there is this God, this infinite being, he doesn't need our love, or she doesn't need our love. It has everything. So what does that really mean? And and it just doesn't make sense. Like, why would God need our love? And how does that help us? Well, it's not what it's really about. What it's really about is acknowledging. Now he talks about pleasure. So he starts talking about pleasure. Yeah, but we all enjoy pleasure. And these are very spiritual people, right? Him and the students, and they're talking about, we just love pleasurable things, right? We all do. And what's the most pleasurable thing? He asks the students, and they're like, well, women, right? You love women, right? Everybody. So you see, he was very practical. He didn't pretend to be this big spiritual guy who has no desires, and he's pure, right? He's this pure Buddha-like figure. No, he likes women, but he says, it's okay to have desires, right? We all have desires, right? For food, whatever, money, women, whatever it is, right? But the secret to that saying is the secret to that idea, that concept in the Bible is to recognize that what you love about, let's say, if you're eating a great fruit and you're just really enjoying this fresh piece of fruit, it's the light of God within it. It's that if everything if God is everywhere, right? The creator, whatever it is to you. And 95% of people believe in some sort of higher power. So it's easy to talk about this. Whatever the creator is, the light, I call it the light, but you can call it whatever you want. You're enjoying the light in it. You're enjoying that godlike aspect of it. And so it's a very practical way to train yourself to realize that to transform your desires into something a little pure. That when you're enjoying something, or if you see a beautiful woman walking down the street, right? Or a beautiful man or whatever, you're looking at that person. And if you see, and you're attracted to them, just know you're attracted to the light within them, to the God within them. That's what we really crave, right? Fulfillment. We want fulfillment from things. It's going back to, it's not the physical things, because if it was just physical things, all these ultra uber millionaires in New York would be happy. Or I'm not here in Miami. There's so much wealth, there's so much wealth here, and people driving $250,000 cars. My neighbors have all these supercars. Like, regular cars aren't enough. They have supercars. I don't judge them, but because they're beautiful cars, but you're driving a supercar. It's not the car, it's the feeling, right? It's the fulfillment of it. So what this Kabbalist is saying is that don't deny your desires, but understand that there's a reason why you're desiring those things, and you're really seeking something deeper from that light you're going to get from even something as simple as looking at a beautiful woman and go, wow, that woman's beautiful. Don't beat yourself up for having desires. We all do. But understand, you're looking You see God in her. To put it, you see the light in her.
Yeah.
And so that's how he transforms, and that's how it explains all these things from the Bible that doesn't it's not practical for most people. Love God and you'll be okay. What does that mean? Like, how does that help?
Yeah.
How does it help a coach somebody? It doesn't. And how does that help? If you hear that at church or at synagogue or at your mosque, you know, every religion has love God.
Mm.
And that's why
Yes.
so many people have left the synagogue, have left the church, have left religion because it
Yes.
feels empty.
Yeah.
So I hope that's making sense. It's a different way
Yeah.
of looking at things,
Yeah.
and it's very coachable on that, you
Yeah.
know, because you don't deny your
Yeah. To me as well, that when you were explaining that, what I was thinking of it there as well is like, it's almost then taking the idea or the concept of gratitude to another level. That real sort of, that sort of, because again, that could just be sort of practiced quite flippantly. It'd be quite, oh, I'm grateful for this. But no, if you really were conscious of it and really, and say taking the level, so what does that actually, whether it's say something that you say you're eating something, is like, what is it? Is it just, there's times where it's like, oh, it's just because you need something to eat. It's just to nourish you, for nutrition. But is it, if you really were conscious about it, what is it actually? What are you taking in? Is it from that? Or as if it's, you're going outside into nature and you're seeing it, you're experiencing it's as opposed to feeling or sort of restricting yourself to feel some sort of spirituality in one specific moment in time. So you can only feel spiritual if you go to whatever your place of recognized
yoga
religion
class or
is.
whatever. Yeah,
Or yeah, or it's only when you go visit a synagogue, a mosque, or a church, or
ashram or something.
wherever. So
Yeah,
that's the only, and for that whatever 1 hour a week or whatever, it's 1 hour a day, whatever it is, if that's the only time, quote unquote, that you're supposed to feel that connection, you know what I mean? It can almost compartmentalize or whatever. Versus if you
correct.
were to think about it more consciously, and again, not to saying whether it's necessarily a god or God, but I've had people who've said it's God to them. They've said it's like the word you said, the light. They said it's light, whether they said it's guidance, universe,
Oh, creative,
energy,
whatever.
hundreds. There's so
Yeah,
many different words of how, and this is where I think, yeah, and I think this is where it's like when the word of when we talk about spirituality, and it is definitely, I think, comes into a coaching way, because you're right in a sense that I think people can have a reaction to the word religion, whether it be, positive or negative in themselves. They don't, whether they like it or don't like the word. And then the same with when it comes to a God or not. But when you try and sort of think about that sort of spirituality or guidance, universe, whatever, it's like meaning, I think, is that sort of like, well, what if we
also
really look at
mindfulness. It's very
100%?
great that mindfulness has been proven. I got my certification in mindfulness from
Yeah.
Brown University. It's been proven. It's science based. Every hospital now has mindfulness, right?
Yes.
Mindfulness programs, which is amazing. Mindfulness
Yes.
is what you said. It's what I was. It's being just aware in the moment,
Yes.
right? Just being there. And
Yes.
when you're there, and Kabbalah just takes it to another level. When you're there, you can recognize the God in everything, whatever that means to
Mm.
you, or
Yeah.
God within you. And that's what
Yes.
this Kabbalist was saying,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
especially when you're really enjoying something, so as you said,
Yes.
it becomes a daily practice. You don't just do spirituality at your church. You
Yes.
go Sunday morning, you pray, I'm good with God. The rest
Done
of
for
the
the
week,
week.
I'm depressed, and I'm sad, and I'm angry, and I shout at my kids, and I cheat my business
Yeah.
partner. That's not what it's about. It's being in the moment, and being spiritual all the time. In fact, one
Yeah.
of the reasons, there was a lot of, over the years, there was a lot of controversy around Kabbalah and Kabbalists. Also, the Masons were Kabbalists.
Mm.
The 2/3 or maybe even 75% of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence and started the first successful democracy in modern times, right? In the United States, they were all Kabbalists, called the Masons, all Kabbalists. But there's always a lot of controversies around it because Kabbalah teaches you that you don't need to go, like, the church or the synagogue. That's great, but you don't need it, because your world
Mm.
here on this podcast, we are in our church. Everything is
Mm.
church or your temple.
Mm.
Every, So you don't need the rabbis. You don't need the Pope. And that's very
Yes.
dangerous for the religious establishment. So they always said, oh, don't study it. It's going to make you go crazy. It doesn't make you go crazy. It makes you question everything. Religionists don't want you to question.
Yes.
And coaching's
And
all about asking questions, right? All about
absolutely, that's it, all about it, exactly. And I think it is really interesting because the amount of people that I've spoken to recently, and I've said this to a couple of people, it's the the idea of you heard of the familiarity effect. So if you like, if you so if like if you're thinking about changing your car and you're thinking, oh, I might, and I say, oh, I think I'll get whatever the new Chevrolet, and then that's all you see.
Yep.
It's just you just see that same car, the same way that like, why does this book or this person's name keep appearing in my sort of consciousness, or whatever? It's that sort of, and it's like, so I've spoken to a few people now, and in this on these various subjects, and it's they more and more sort of people like yourself keep coming up. So I think it's a really interesting space, especially in, and I hate to use the phrase, but I'm going to use it in sort of modern times of where we are because of this, the world we live in, and the constant world's always in flux. But when you're in it, it really feels like it is. You know what I mean? Where we are in the moment. But I think it, whatever the sort of personal perspectives people have on it, that sort of where you're coming from that level of wanting further meaning. I think even more so when there's so much stuff happening in the world, you can feel so detached from it. We can feel so detached from everything that's happening in the various parts of the world through whatever all the wars that are going on, because you are completely detached. Unless you have real direct contact with the people that are there, whether it be relatives or people on either side of it, you're completely in some way detached, barring the costs of things. But it's still, in some ways, it's like you don't know. So it can question everything. You think, oh, you can question what's the point? You can really
Mhm.
think, well, Jesus, what's the point of me doing my little thing here? Will it make a difference? But going back to the point you started at the very answer to the first question, is enabling people to have their own small impact on the world. And the more positive impacts we can have, despite how detached we can feel from the big things, if we can have those smaller impacts within our own circles, our own controls, that's where I think the meaning comes in. And it's something with people, I think, are crying out for even more,
Yeah.
because you can get almost too big, because it can get too overwhelming.
And overwhelming. If you scroll too
Yeah.
much, you're just going to be
Yeah.
depressed. You're just
Yeah.
going to be depressed if you start scrolling on Instagram or YouTube and
Yeah.
watching all the horrible things, because that gets
Yeah.
clicks. They don't promote a neighbor helping a neighbor is never going to go viral
No.
on YouTube. That's not
Yeah.
going to go viral. Somebody shooting somebody will.
Yes.
And so, especially today, it's interesting. So going back, interesting, the Zohar, this book that really is like the textbook of Kabbalah. It's like 23 volumes. It's really, and that's what all of the subsequent works of Kabbalah are based on. It's the most
Mm.
important book. Um, it talks about something called Gog and Magog, which will happen in our time. Gog and Magog is Armageddon. It talks about it in the age of Aquarius, which is now. But it describes as a war of thoughts. And isn't that what's happening? We have a war inside us. Gog and Magog is not a physical war. It's the war
Mm.
inside our head. And if any time in history there's been a war inside people's heads, it's today, where all these, tools that are supposed to make our world better, right? Social media and computers, the internet are just bombarding us with negative thoughts and negative energy. Let's call it that.
Mm.
So it talked about it and said that's going to be a very dangerous time. And we see some people into conspiracies, like, is the world flat? Is it round? Like, everything is up for grabs. It's a real war. And that's why spirituality and the truth that we're actually, you know, the connections, and when you start adding value to the world, and that's why, again, going full circle, that's why I work with small business owners, because they already know how to be impactful.
Mm.
They can do even more. So these are the people who can have real value, impact the world, and show that, you could be a good neighbor. You can get off your phone. You can be busy, add value, right? Be busy building something, whether it's a SaaS product or a medical office or whatever you're doing with your entrepreneurial journey, right? Or a podcast. you're building, you don't have time to fall into Gogumagog. You don't have time to fall into the nonsense because it's out there, and it's out there more than ever before. And 2,000 years ago, which is, you can ask, it's a whole other conversation. How did it know? How did the author of the Zohar, Shimon Bar Yochai, knew this? Well, that's a whole other conversation. But he said now is going to be the Armageddon war. So you don't have to worry about yes, there's also wars, right? Because when people are all have the Gog and Magog inside their head, they create wars. They create negativity from the smallest to the largest, right? Whether it's not being kind to your neighbor or not being kind to another country. It's all the same crap, just on a different way.
Yeah.
So that's, and by the way, and the story of the little boy with the starfish?
I think so, but yeah.
Right. This lady sees all these starfish got thrown out of the sea, and there's thousands of starfish, and there's this little boy taking one starfish, throwing it back in the water and taking another one. And an adult comes up to him like, oh, why you can't save all these You're like, what are you doing, little boy? Like, you can't save all these thousands of starfish. Yeah, but I saved this one. And so that's where we have to be that little boy. And,
yes.
and as long as we're in the process of saving one person, making a difference, it sounds, idealistic. Yes, it is, but it's not hard to do. You don't need to save the whole world, because there's many people out there saving starfish. We just have to save our one starfish, and and like that old lady you talked to, she was inspired. Now she's going to probably go out there and start throwing starfish back too. Right. So what are you going to do? Are you going to fall into the garbage and the nonsense and the, high oil prices right now, right? And inflation and worry, or are you going to make a difference? And when you start making a difference, you actually see, this is why I tie it into business. When you start adding value to the world and you start focusing on that, you actually see that actually there's extraordinary amount of opportunity for entrepreneurs and for business people.
Yeah.
Because then you can literally, I just bought a watch band from Hong Kong, right? Like, amazing. Couldn't do that 25 years ago. So there's so much opportunity. All these tools that are feeding us with negativity, right? The internet, our phones and everything, actually you can use them from anywhere. You could be in a little town in Ireland, and if you want, make millions of dollars selling something amazing to the whole world.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
This wouldn't exist 20 years ago.
No,
right?
No, absolutely. No, 100%.
So it actually, but you have to start doing something, and it means to start, who's your starfish today? Who can you make a difference today? And then things will open up. And so, I have all these wonderful, wonderful clients who are making a difference. Some are just, listen, they have, one guy has a couple restaurants, really nice, like comfort food restaurants, but his mission is to give human dignity, to have livable wages for all his employees. And even the busboy, like the dishwasher, I think makes like $50,000 in his restaurant. They do really well. But guess what? Yeah, everybody does well.
Yeah.
But guess what? Because he's adding so much value to his employees, he makes 30% more profit than a similar restaurant and similar size. He's actually making more money.
Yeah.
Because he's adding value to, and that's his mission. His mission is to have human dignity for workers. Amazing, amazing thing.
Isn't that?
And he's making more money because of it.
Yeah. But isn't that sort of like, it almost though, because thank you for sharing. I literally was getting sort of goosebumps there, because that's so what you hear of, and especially
you're coming to be a dishwasher and you.
Well, it's because I mean it's like, because you do. I mean, it is I don't know if it's definitely a cultural thing, and but like the sort of people making money in the restaurant game, unless you're in the States, especially in the States, unless you're the owner, like it's almost nigh impossible. But isn't it interesting though, almost for that gentleman to sort of flip the sort of what would be the standardized approach to that, and go, as opposed to just pay him as little as possible, take as much as you can off the top, and sort of like race to the bottom approach. Going, he's leading with that thing you said, leading with that to make it, the human side of the better for the everyone individuals, and then it still has that knock-on effect.
It
So
has a huge knock-on effect because
yeah,
people then work harder. They feel invested.
yes,
Everybody
cared
loves
about.
working there, right?
Yeah,
Everybody feels like they're owners. And he even gives like,
yeah,
when he has trouble, he'll loan him money. He's
yeah,
actually like a ex-hippie. He, like
yeah,
real leftist liberal dude you'd never think would be an entrepreneur. And he used to be a
sure,
social worker and worked with like homeless people. And that's where his background. But somehow, he started this comfort food restaurant and he
love it.
uses that stuff, the thinking, that kind of hippie thinking,
Yeah,
to made it better for everybody. And now he's like rich. And but that's all. He feels guilty about being wealthy. So that's another thing we're working on. I'm like,
yeah, sure.
be
Yeah,
wealthy, because then it shows people, look, you can offer jobs where even the quote unquote lowest level person can have
yes.
a livable wage and you're going to make a lot of money.
But
Isn't
isn't
that
it the
amazing?
yeah, and that word you said was dignity, wasn't it? That's such a powerful word, isn't it? Because we all know what that means. You can have that image in your head, and that's if you're leading from that, if you're leaning into that is your sort of modus operandi of how you're going to run your business, then you immediately know if it's not. Like, do you know what I mean? If you know the standard. So this is where so we can see where you're coming from. Yeah. So when you're this is a question I love to ask when I have anyone who's a coach on as well. Is like, did you obviously don't have to be going to naming specifics, but anyone that you can remember or people you've worked with, the sort of almost before and after you've worked with them, when they came to you before they worked with you and how they were as an individual, as a business, to then at the end of it and how they changed or how it was different.
Well, I have a few examples in mind. I've had a lot of people come to me who maybe are relatively successful in their business and they didn't, the person we need to start having human dignity for first is ourselves.
Mm,
Having respect and human dignity, and appreciation for who we are. Because if we can't
mm,
appreciate ourselves, then it'll be very hard to appreciate others. We have to start with that. And so let's say I've had several people in the last few years who were, let's say, working really, really hard as different sort of contractors and trades, building trades, whether it's
mm,
landscaping or roofing or there's a lot of these companies out there
mm.
very, very hard. And the transformation most of them need to make to get their business to the next level is appreciating that they are not a landscaper. If they have a business, they're a CEO. They're an owner of an
Mm.
asset. They're almost like they have the stock called their business and they have to appreciate what they set up for themselves. Originally, they set it up because they like landscaping or roofing or whatever, and you can make some good money in it and make your own hours, but then it grew into something bigger. But they're not, they have to respect the position. So they have to respect who they are. They're not a landscaper anymore.
Yeah.
They have a team doing that and they still love doing that. I have clients. I have a client, he makes $4 million a year and he still loves going out there and digging ditches. He just loves, he loves it. But the transformation, he loves being out there with his guys, and
Yeah.
digging basements, to build a house on. I'm like,
Yeah.
bro, you make $4 million. You could hire somebody to do that. Anyways, he likes being with those big tools.
Yeah.
So, but so I have had a bunch of people like that in that field, and let's call it the trades, who
Yeah.
transformed into being CEOs. And then they start thinking, oh, if I'm a CEO, then I have to hang out with other CEOs and be at a higher level of thinking and start networking and acting the part. And so they start dressing differently. They get a nice watch. They start going to chambers of commerce. They start going on LinkedIn and connecting with other CEOs. And when they change their consciousness, start respecting themselves. Look, you could have been a landscaper working for somebody, been a manager. I'm sure by now you would have been a manager, managing a team and being a landscaping supervisor or whatever. No, you started a business and you invested all this money into it and you pay yourself last and you pay your team first. You have to make payroll every month and all this stuff. Respect the position. You should be proud of that and start thinking bigger. And when they start thinking bigger, I've had clients that double their revenue year over year, 3-4 years in a row, because now they start thinking big. And they said, what would a CEO do? Right? A CEO would network, right? CEO would tell them, go play golf, meet other CEOs. That's what CEOs do. That's where you make
Yeah.
deals and you meet other important people who can give you huge contracts, right? Networking,
Yeah.
relationship building. And so I've seen a bunch of that where people change what they do.
Yeah.
Also seen this with with doctors who have, they started a business, but you're not a cardiologist anymore. You're a CEO of a cardiology clinic. Start
Yes.
thinking like that. And when they start thinking like that, they hire physicians and other providers to do what they did. And now they can think about, how can I bring my high level of service to other people? Right. So
Yeah.
then they open up other cardiology clinics because they've taken themselves out of being the day-to-day,
Yeah.
grinding. There's another grind, right? There's a whole other grind then,
Yeah.
but that's very satisfying, building this enterprise
Yeah.
instead of being the cardiologist. If you want to be a cardiologist,
Yeah.
get a job. It's easier. Get a job at a hospital. We need cardiologists. Get a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
You do very well, no matter what country you're in, whether you're in Western
Yeah.
Europe, US, do well. No, you're taking the risk, then own it. So that's the kind of transformation I see a lot with people.
You c- It, from what you're saying there, if I'm right in thinking, there's a huge element of in there in like sort of that identity shift, isn't it? It's that sort of, the sort of you say a lot of the time, because even like the gentleman you're talking about who's doing like the restaurant business and sort of like, because if it's working as well, if it's successful in a sense of, for business as well, that monetary successful in that regard as well, because it's always the twofold, the purpose and the meaning side, but if it's not making any money, it won't survive type thing.
Hmm.
That um shift into sort of almost, is there an element of people having to give themselves permission? They're like, oh, but I was just a landscaper, or I was just a whatever.
Yeah.
It's like that thing
Oh,
of like,
yeah.
you got to
That's
kind
why you
of
need
walk through the
coaches. That's why
door.
you need coaches.
Ah,
Yeah. That's the
yeah.
purpose of the coach, is to show you actually that, the number one job of a coach is to point out people's ego. And our ego is
Mm,
oftentimes very negative. It
yep.
keeps us small. Our ego is
Yes.
connected to our animal brain, our lizard brain. Our lizard brain wants to be safe. We just got recently a
Yeah.
bunny. A bunny, very cute. It eats its hay, it drinks a little water, and then goes hide underneath this. It comes and plays with us, but most of the day, it just hides underneath the sofa. It's safe, right? That's what our ego, we're also bunnies in a way, right? Most of
Yeah.
us just eat and eat our little hay and then go hide. And the job of a coach is to show people that's your ego. Your ego wants you to be safe. And I'm here to tell you that you're bigger than that. And I'm giving
Mm,
you, I see it in you, right? That's the power of a great coach. I see it in you. And it's not ego to think, because then ego tricks us and makes us think that, oh, if I think bigger, then that's even more ego. Well, depends what it's for. If you want to be bigger to make more money and to show how great you are, yes. But if you want to be bigger and make more money and have a big business because you want to affect people in the positive, that's wonderful. But coaching is very important in that, because the coaches have a great role in exposing this ego, this small animal, this little bunny inside us,
mm,
that just wants to hide, right?
yeah.
And just, fortunately, there's a lot of work for coaches to do in this world, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
have to break out of that little animalistic, our animal lizard brain that wants to just protect us, and instead do something of adding value, right? Whatever that is. And you can start with where you are, making a difference, and being an inspiration to others. And so these guys who are doing, now or gals who, right, these people who are thinking like a seer, they've had this identity shift. They're inspiring their people also to grow. They're showing them what's possible and
Yeah.
giving them more opportunities. So the landscaper can now become a landscape supervisor, because that guy who was the landscape super, who was the owner, he's gone. He's doing other things.
Yeah.
So it elevates everybody. And so
Yeah.
mention the
Yeah.
bunny. Bunny's a great example.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. No, no, really. No, I love that because it really does demonstrate one, the sort of the transformation that people can have. But as you say, though, where you self as a coach comes into it, because that is hard to do that on your own, if not impossible. Like, do you know
Very
what I
hard.
mean? You really do need the support and the person to help you through that.
Yeah. And by the way, the more successful you are, the more you need a coach
Yeah,
because your ego is going to want to keep you safe, right? The bigger
sure.
you act, the more your ego will want to help have you contract right into that little bunny.
Yeah,
And so you see, even the greatest players, like you look at Michael Jordan. I don't know who's the greatest basketball player ever, but
yeah,
he's
yeah,
someone
yeah,
who's known all around the world, right? And I was just listening to somebody talk about this, right? Like uh, he could fly through the air, right, with his tongue out, and like just amazing. Air Jordan, right? You
yeah,
think, well, why does he need a coach? What coach in
mm,
the world can do better than him, right? Nobody.
yeah,
Coach isn't there because he's a better player. The coach was there to lower his ego,
yeah,
right? To
yeah, yeah,
make sure he doesn't get in his head, make sure he doesn't start having negative thoughts, right? Because if Michael Jordan has negative thought, like what's happening with Tiger Woods, right? Tiger
yeah,
Woods, maybe the greatest golf player. I don't know. I don't really follow golf that much, but every time he's failed, it's because he was in his head. He was in his ego. And he may have needed better coaches. I don't know,
yeah,
because he keeps falling, and maybe because he was trying to do things on his own, not ask a coach for help,
yeah,
get over his
absolutely.
limited thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been great to chat to you, Andrew. Really
Yeah.
has so much
Well,
in it.
thanks for
I
having
have
me.
I have my final two questions I'd like to ask everyone. So go with them. So first one is: are there any quotes or phrases that are important to you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this and we kind of touched on it, but actually
Yeah.
my teacher, the Rob means like rabbi. By the way, rabbi means teacher. So the
Mm,
whole lineage of religionists, like when religion started, it was never about a rabbi who was holier than thou. It was just a teacher. So rabbi means teacher. So my teacher, Rabbi Berg, um, he always talked about that. And I don't know, I'm paraphrasing him, but the
yeah.
quote is, all that's missing in the world is common courtesy and human dignity. That's all that's missing. And that's always affected me because I thought spirituality was always about love. You got to love everybody, right? You got to
Mm,
love, it's all about love, right? The hippie thing, love and flower children. It's impossible to love everybody. Impossible. And not everyone's going to love you. If you're striving to love everyone, you're going to be a failure because that's impossible. Because somebody's going to come there and cut you off on the road and you're going to hate them. So
yeah.
love it. And if you want everybody
Or
to love,
they'll find you incredibly annoying.
yeah,
You're just
it's not love. It's not love.
yeah,
So we can't aspire to be, and also to be loved. People who want to be loved by everybody, they're some of the most
yeah,
sad people in the world. Impossible.
yeah.
In fact, one of the ways you know you're doing something right is if there's people out there who are haters. If people don't like
Mm,
you, maybe you're doing something right. Right? There you have
yeah.
opposition.
Yes.
But what I like about that quote and that idea is that we can learn to have human dignity and common courtesy and respect for everybody around us. And that's all that's missing because we have all the wealth, all the opportunities out there, and we can see the root of every problem, whether it's between humans or between countries, right? We have all these wars going on. It's no respect. It's a lack of respect for the other people. And so it starts, you can solve every problem, right? Putin and Zelensky can sit down, or the mullahs and Trump can sit down and solve any problem if they just come with courtesy and respect towards each other. And that's where we need to begin, is to have common courtesy. Live your life, live every day with respect and common courtesy to others. It'll transform your life. And that's something you can do. You can even do it with the person you hate. You don't have to love them.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Even if you right? We've all had that job, or we despise our colleague or our boss, or so annoying, or somebody even in our family, right, who annoys us. You can respect them. Because without respect, that's when war begins. Without
Yeah.
respect, fighting begins. So
Yeah.
I try to live
No, I
by
love
that.
that.
I try to
Yeah,
live
yeah.
by
No, I
that.
love that.
Not
I love
love,
that.
just common courtesy.
Yeah, absolutely. You've probably gone through some of them already, but we'll ask the question: who have been the biggest influences in your life?
I mean, there's a lot because I'm you see all the books behind me. I'm a
Yeah.
lifelong student, but I would say Philip Berg and also his wife Karen, who opened up the Kabbalah Center throughout the world. Karen Berg, who recently passed. Um, they've been great influences on me because they were never these saintly figures. They were just human beings. They were human
Mm.
beings who also taught Kabbalah and helped millions of people transform. So they've been a big influence on me, and especially because they were human. Like, even though they were these great figures that, um, had millions of students throughout the world. Have you heard of the Kabbalah Center? It's pretty big, right?
Mm.
All over the world. There's centers in London, close by you. There's study groups in Ireland. They're everywhere in the world, but they didn't pretend to be what they were not. I was there on a Saturday at their home, and they were having a fight, and they didn't hide it. Like, they were fighting because they're husband and wife, and they didn't hide that, which I love that. They were real. Like, they were having a
Yeah.
fight. You think, oh, this great rabbi, this sagely person, and the sagely woman who written all these books, and you think they're just like Buddha. No, they're
Yeah.
human.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Right. And that's was very influential. That was really powerful to me, to be real. One of my
Yeah.
values is being authentic, honoring the truth. And
Mm.
for me, anybody who can honor the truth to themselves, that they're human and they're going to fall sometimes, and they're going to be you can't be they're going to be disrespectful to somebody else, or have a fight, or shout at somebody. That's being authentic. That's being a real,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So that they've been very influential. And also, I would say another person that's helped me a lot, still around, Hale Dwoskin. He's manages the Sedona method, which is an emotional. I encourage everybody to learn the Sedona method, which is based on Lester Levinson's work. It's in Arizona, but you can learn, right? You can learn from anywhere.
Yeah.
It is the most powerful emotional releasing techniques. And I was lucky enough I almost worked for him. So I worked with him studying the Sedona method. I ended up not working for him, but because of his influence on me, I got into studying the Sedona method. And that's been great because besides studying spirituality, I'm also, I've gotten pretty good at helping myself and others regulate their emotions, which is
Mm.
so important today. We have such a, behavioral health crisis all around the world,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
simple, effective, powerful techniques that help you regulate your emotions are essential.
Yeah.
Anxiety doesn't matter whether you're in Bangladesh. I work with people in Bangladesh, in the Philippines, in Colombia, everywhere, and they're all going through the same thing:
Yeah.
worldwide stress, anxiety, depression. It's a pandemic. It's the real pandemic.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the Sedona method is, pitching them. Now,
Yeah.
I don't work for them.
Yeah.
I'm making my
Yeah.
not making commission, but I would go to Sedona.com and learn that method. So he's been a
Very
big
cool.
influence on me. Without him,
Yeah.
I would just be depressed. Like, there's no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. As I say, it's been wonderful. Really has been wonderful to chat to you. I have one final question for yourself, though, Andrew, which is, what's important for your future?
That I stay on my path, that I don't get
Mm.
sidetracked by some big money venture or something.
Mm.
And I stay on
Yeah.
my path of building this nonprofit called It's spiritualbiz.org. I'm building this nonprofit, helping people. I hope I stay focused on it and don't get sidetracked, because it's funny when you let go, when you don't want to work with anybody on big business deals, they all come to you
Yeah.
with big business deals. Oh, for years, I can't get a business deal. I can't get anything going. Now that, no, 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 I'm running a nonprofit. Now everybody's knocking on my door. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I stay on track and, stay helping people and
Yeah.
adding value. That's
Love it.
important to
Love
me.
it. 100%. I say thank you again, Andrew, for chatting to me. And obviously, what you're doing as a non-profit now is obviously incredible. And I wish you well with it and
Thank you.
continued success for it. I want to make sure that you just mentioned it there, but if you want to just give a mention again of the website, and I'll make sure the link is in the comments as well.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, it's spiritualbiz.org. And you can find me, Andrew Grinbaum. There's only one Grinbaum out there. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. So I'm out there. You can connect with me, and I'm happy to help anybody
Love
who
it.
contacts me,
Yeah,
especially if you're building a
100%.
business and you're unsure of what your next steps are to add value to the world.
100%. We'll make sure all those links are in the notes as well. Andrew, once again, thank you so much for chatting to me
Thanks.
today.
This is great. Good job, James.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.